Hi, it's Fiona Lewis here from Super Savvy Business, and today we have the lovely Kerry Anne Cassidy from Skill Junction. And Kerry Anne has come to talk to us today about the big topic of assertiveness. Now, for those of you who haven't come across Kerry Anne before, I'll just give you a bit of a background. She is a leadership, learning and development specialist, and she is so passionate about helping people get ahead in work, business and life. And over 18 years in the learning and development space, she has, and also with international experience in several countries, she has shown the importance, she's learnt the importance of the human connection. So, Kerry, welcome to our call today.
Thanks, Fiona. It's great to be here.
Look, we were having a discussion about a week ago, weren't we, about assertiveness, and I was very excited to hear about the work you've been doing in creating and generating programs. We'll talk about that in a little while. But I know that we were bouncing some fantastic ideas around about this topic, and that's why I came up with the idea of getting on a call with you, because I really wanted to be able to share more of your ideas with both of our communities. So just wondering, we were talking about how important assertiveness is in the workplace, but you've also mentioned how that can flow through to all areas of life.
Yes, absolutely. I really do believe that, assertiveness is not something that you're going to be using every single day of your life, because it's like anything, you have to have balance in your life. But certainly, I think a lot of us could be using assertiveness more frequently in those instances and areas in our lives where we just have that gut feel that we should be speaking up for ourselves. We should be saying what we're thinking we should be saying, but we don't necessarily say it out loud, if that makes sense.
And why do you find people generally don't speak up when they feel that gut feeling they want to say something?
Oh, Fiona, I think there's so many different reasons for that. I think one of the biggest reasons that I've come across in the training that I do is fear. The fear that we all have inside of us to be connected with other human beings is really strong. And so what that means is we fear rejection. We fear that if we speak up and say our minds, that people are going to see us in a way that is not the way we want them to see us. Mm-hmm. And that's really, really confronting to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I guess for some people, going back and thinking about NLP and thinking about, people's prior experiences, perhaps when they were children, when they've tried to speak up, they were squashed, or perhaps somebody responded in an aggressive manner. So there could almost be some previous experiences that are causing them now to feel that they don't want to speak up for fear of having a negative reaction as well.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And just adding on to that, I think from a brain science perspective, we're learning so much more about the brain, not only from an NLP perspective and a positive psychology and emotional intelligence perspective, but honestly, what we found is that the brain is set up for threat. So, every 3 to 5 seconds, our brain is checking out our environment and saying, is this environment a safe environment for me to be in? Yes or no? And if it finds that we're in a threat situation, then it shuts down. And threat could be anything. It could be that I don't like the way that you are looking at me, or I don't understand the tone that you're using with me. So there's all sorts of things that could actually stimulate and set off the chemicals in our body and our brains to those previous experiences that weren't pleasant for us. And so we freeze and we simply don't know how to deal with the situation.
And that's a huge thing for a lot of people. And I guess it almost seems overwhelming to overcome those sorts of emotions and feelings.
That's right. And, the one tip that I have for people around dealing with emotion is that, our brain is so, so clever. What we have to learn to do, though, is to understand it and therefore to be able to recognize the symptoms and the signals. And there was a really great conference that I sat in and listened on with, I'm just trying to remember his name, one of my real favorites. It'll come to me. And during the session, what they were talking about was just how our emotions come up. Literally, they come up and they wash over us like a wave. And if we were just to hang on to that emotion for 90 seconds, so not do anything, say anything rash, or do anything physical or verbal, then the brain will have a chance for the message to transmit from what we call the amygdala, which is the survival part of our brain. It's the oldest part of our brain. It's a part of our brain that is responsible for our survival. And if we allow the message to travel to our frontal lobe or our frontal cortex, which is responsible for how we process language and how we problem solve and come up with decisions, then we've got a far likelier and better opportunity to think through and come up with great solutions that are better for our own self-esteem and for the relationships that we have.
Do you know, I'm so pleased to hear that you said it and explained it the way you did, because I was about to share some recent experiences that I've been through, and what you've just explained is exactly what happened for me. I've been recently in a situation in business where it was really important for me to be assertive, and to be able to speak up and stand up for what was right for me and for my business. And I was fearful initially of doing that, for fear of rejection, for fear of them saying, well, no, we're doing it our way, and, tough luck if you don't like it. But I was encouraged by a mentor to be assertive. And in fact, the absolute opposite thing happened. Once I actually stood up and was assertive and was clear about what was needed for me and my business, I actually gained a lot of respect from the other people. And I actually put myself and my business up on a certain level of a certain pedestal, and got exactly what I needed to have in order to have the correct business relationship. And now there's a wonderful level of respect between both of us, because I was able to stand up and be assertive. So hearing you speak about it from that scientific point of view is really quite enlightening for me to understand that.
And it's really interesting that you've shared that, because there's a number of points I just want to bring out there. The first one is that you didn't just assert yourself for the sake of asserting yourself. You actually came to a point where you realized that unless you actually stood up and spoke up for yourself and what you wanted, your business and your reputation was going to suffer. So your gut was telling you one thing, and your head and your heart was telling you another. So they were in conjunction or in congruency with one another. And I think that's the first step to knowing that you have got to assert yourself.
Yeah.
And the second step is once you do it, irrespective of how the other person responds, you've got to understand that you can live with the repercussions. And for the most part, because you had asserted yourself in a positive way, the other party, generally speaking, able to take that information on board, because equally they want to be in that relationship too. There's pros and cons for both sides. So what you got from the results, which is what I absolutely advocate around assertiveness, is you got a win-win, and you deepened the human connection. So you deepened your relationship, and that is the ultimate. That's why we should do it.
Exactly. But you know what the other flow-on effect was, and I think you mentioned this just before, is the posture that I gained from being able to do that. So I actually gained a lot of confidence and posture within myself by being assertive. So it had that flow-on effect.
And that's beautiful, because again, if I go back and I think about the scientific proof around that, Amy Cuddy's a really awesome example of where she's actually taken results of people who go into interviews, for example, and hunch their bodies up and become as small as possible. And generally speaking, the interviews don't go too well, whereas they've done studies where they're actually getting them to open up their bodies as big as they can before they go into an interview. And what that does is it raises their levels of testosterone and lowers their cortisol, which is the stress hormone.
Wow.
Which causes us to go into the panic attack and get all foggy and not be able to think straight in a highly emotive situation. So what happened for you there is that your cortisol levels have gone down and your testosterone levels have gone up. And that is a good thing.